I'm JP Tuesday.
And I'm Kiki Canon. As lifelong Disney fans, the work of countless talented Disney creatives have shaped our lives.
Now, as the Disney catalog expands, we're taking a journey through film and television to discover if that spark that shaped us as children lives on in adulthood.
Does your favorite Disney media still cast that same spell? Join us as we find out. We are Rewatching the Magic.
Hi, Kiki.
Hi, Tuesday.
All right, before we get going, we do have to talk about the Logan Award, and we're going to turn it over to our good friend Ian, and he'll tell you about it right now.
Attention comedy musicians and comedy music fans. The Logan Awards are taking open nominations for outstanding comedy songs and videos released last year for this year's awards. Did you release a comedy song or music video last year, or have a favorite comedy song or video that was released last year? Then nominate it for the Logan Awards today. What are the Logan Awards? To put it simply, they're the Comedy Music Awards, presented annually by the Funny Music Project, and are presented in 3 categories: Outstanding Original Comedy Song, Outstanding Parody Song, and Outstanding Comedy Music Video. If you have a comedy song that was released last year that you'd like to nominate for this year's awards, head to LoganAwards.com and click the Nominations tab at the top. There is a minimum and maximum of 5 nominations per person. Hurry! Nominations close this year on May 28th. For more details about Logan himself, the awards, and more, check out LoganAwards.com. Help us commemorate the year's best comedy songs and music videos with a trophy, the way they do with every other form of entertainment. But if you want your favorites to win, you have to nominate them by May 28th. Get your nominations in now at LoganAwards.com, brought to you by TheFump.com.
Gotta get those submissions in. Time's a ticking.
Yep. So let's get to a few things we want to talk about. One of the big news that came out of this week, Dave Feloni has got a promotion over at Lucasfilm. He is now executive creative director at Lucasfilm.
Yeah, directly reporting to Kathleen Kennedy, from what I read.
Yeah, he's pretty much the Kevin Feige of Lucasfilm now.
Yeah, I mean, good for him. I think he's been doing a good job.
Yeah.
I think Kathleen Kennedy's been doing a good job, too. I mean, I like them both. So.
Kathleen Kennedy's been around longer than a lot of people would think, even in the, before Disney bought Lucasfilm. Even before. Oh, yeah,
I've been a fan of hers for decades.
Yeah, so she knows what she's doing. And to see what Dave Filoni's been doing and saying, hey, we want you to be the head creative force behind what we're going to do at Lucasfilm from now on. Yeah, it's great. It's congratulations to him. Apparently, this is not a new position. Apparently, he's been the head of creative for a bit, according to some people at Lucasfilm. It's just they just got around to updating the website.
Oh.
I don't know if this is true or them covering their butts, but it sure got buzz talking about Lucasfilm.
That would be hilarious if it would have been his letterhead and everything. It's just like one day somebody was tooling around on the website and was like, wait, did nobody bother to update Dave's bio on the website?
That's how it got known, is that there are people who search Lucasfilm's website 24/7 looking for stuff to report.
I
guess. But yeah, Filoni has done a lot of great stuff with Lucasfilm over the years. Clone Wars, The Mandalorian, pretty much and now The Bad Batch that came out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's see what Filoni can do in the future and what they're coming up with next. The next thing we want to talk about, Marvel's M.O.D.O.K, which finally came out on Hulu and Star and Disney Plus if you're outside the U.S.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is something that both of us have been looking forward to for a while.
I have been waiting for this thing for a hot minute, let me tell you.
It's been a few years since this got announced, but then again, this is animated and stop motion animated. This is Stupid Buddy Studios, the same studio that does Robot Chicken.
Yeah, I have been hearing both Seth Green and Patton Oswalt kind of dropping hints about this thing for ages.
Yeah, so they, years ago, Hulu announced that they were working with Marvel to do several shows, and the only two that actually got full development was Hellstorm and M.O.D.O.K. And I'm still kind of bitter that we never got that Ghost Rider show that was announced back then, because I really liked the actor that they had from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and I really wanted to see what they can do with them, but Feige said mine, and that was it.
Yeah, I really liked him as well, and I was interested in them carrying over from that, and I am also sad that we never got to see that. But both of us watched the first episode, no spoilers.
Go ahead.
I got really interested when a few people got a hold of an early preview, and it started getting around on the review sites that this was kind of Marvel's attempt at Venture Brothers. And now that I've seen the first episode, I get why that's what they were saying.
Yeah, I could see this on Adult Swim. It also has a lot of vibes from the Harley Quinn show, at least to me.
This feels a little less Harley Quinn to me and a lot more Adult Swim. And some of it, there's at least one kind of plot point that was just directly lifted from Venture Brothers.
Mm.
Where I was like, oh, you're just straight up taking that. Okay, that's fine. I'll be interested to see where you go with that, if anywhere.
As of this recording, episodes 1 and 2 were released on IGN with a special interview with Patton Oswalt. I don't know how long that's gonna stay up there.
The entire season is up on Hulu as of this recording.
I like Patton Oswalt's take on M.O.D.O.K. To have him a little bit more humanized here, again, having a family, having the day-to-day life of a supervillain, which is part of it feels like this was someone else's idea for something else, and then like Cartoon Network didn't pick it up, and they said, well, let's just retool this and try to sell Marvel on it.
I don't know about that entirely because did you ever read the Gwenpool series?
No, I've never. I'm familiar with it, but I've never really read it.
Okay, well, I read most of it. Gwenpool and M.O.D.O.K have some interactions there, and this feels closer, not entirely, but it feels closer to that take on M.O.D.O.K. So I'm saying there's a little bit of precedent in the actual Marvel Universe, comics version for this sort of thing. So I'm kind of wondering if that's where this didn't spin off from. Knowing that Patton worked on Venture Brothers and Seth Green with the other Adult Swim stuff, and both of them have done Marvel kind of parodies before, and then the Star Wars parodies that Seth Green had done, and it all feels in that same kind of vein.
But I enjoyed it. I'm gonna try to see the rest of this series.
Yeah.
And I hope that the powers that be let this show continue and not, like Hellstorm said, all right, we had let you do your one season and now you're done.
Yeah, I mean, whether or not I'll want more seasons of it kind of, I think, will depend on where they go with this one season. It might be a one and done thing. But so far, the first episode has me intrigued. I will probably binge the rest of the series as soon as I get a moment.
And if Feige wants to, let's bring Patton into the MCU as M.O.D.O.K.
I'm for it. I'm certainly not against it.
So let's move on to this week. We are continuing Fury's big month, and we are crossing that rainbow bridge to Asgard for Thor. When Iron Man 2 came out, And I was in the theater watching the film, and they got to that ending scene where they showed the hammer. There was this one person, I will never forget it. This one person in the theater just shouted very loudly, "Thor, really? They're doing a movie on Thor?" And honestly, when you mentioned that character to a lot of people when it started, that was the general response. Like, you're doing a movie on Thor? Of all the Marvel heroes you have, Thor gets his own movie?
Well, we talked a little bit about it last week, but for a lot of the for a lot of the history of Marvel Comics, Thor was kind of a joke.
Yeah.
I mean, he was the dude in the weird winged helmet who had this very bizarre speech pattern that was even a joke with Stan Lee. If you go back and watch old interviews with Stan when he talks about his characters, I remember one that I saw sometime in the mid-90s, and he was talking about how he created various characters, and he talked about how Peter Parker was the kids he grew up with in his old neighborhood, and how Reed Richards was the smart guy that he went to high school with, and he was naming all these different characters and where he got the thing from, and he said that Thor was when he wanted to be kind of pretentious and Shakespearean and philosophical, except that he wasn't very pretentious or Shakespearean or philosophical and didn't know what half of those words meant.
Yeah, even to this day, if you read Thor in a comic, he still has that Shakespearean Old English type font every time he talks. Even though they've kind of dropped more of the "verily, forsooth" kind of speech into him.
Yeah, and it really doesn't fit in with the, like, why would a Norse god be speaking like that? Like, it makes no sense. But that's just the way Thor talks in Marvel Comics, you know?
Yeah, and and when a Thor movie was talked about, a lot of directors wanted to take that into a very Shakespearean direction, which is kind of where we go in this movie.
Except they were very smart about it when they did this film, because they give it the trappings of Shakespeare in the fact of they use these kind of Shakespearean actors. Mm-hmm. You get your Anthony Hopkins. They very smartly cast Tom Hiddleston. You get the family dynamics. You get the royal family backstabbing princes and battle over a throne and matters of intrigue and deceit and things like that. Those are Shakespearean themes, and it fits in with that idea. But then you can drop the kind of pretentious speech in that sense. I mean, Thor does have a very interesting pattern of speech. Mm-hmm. But it does sound more realistic. He sounds out of place in modern New Mexico. Enough for people to comment on. But he doesn't sound out of place on Earth entirely. He just sounds like a guy who maybe watched one too many movies.
And to add to the Shakespearean part, you got Kenneth Branagh as the director, who kind of was known for directing film versions of Shakespeare's plays.
He is how I learned Shakespeare as a child. That is not a joke. When he was putting out most of his major Shakespeare films, when he had that massive run of Shakespeare films in the 90s, that is how my father taught me Shakespeare. Fond memories of Kenneth Branagh Shakespeare films. It's interesting because the fact that they got him to direct this really took us all by surprise.
And
we talked last week about getting the actors to do a superhero movie, and that it was still kind of a stretch to get them to do a superhero movie. But to get a director like Branagh to do a superhero movie, that was when the MCU kind of went from, oh, they're making a lot of money, to suddenly they had talent. Because Branagh, and we're not trying to diss Jon Favreau, of course. I mean, he was doing gangbusters on the Iron Man films, of course. But when Branagh stepped in, and all of a sudden he's bringing with him Anthony Hopkins, and he's bringing with him Natalie Portman, and he's bringing with him Stellan Skarsgård, and he's bringing over Idris Elba, and all of a sudden Branagh just shows up and he's like, yeah, we're going to make the money, and I'm just going to bring all of this critical acclaim with me too.
Yeah, to this day, there are people who straight up were disappointed that Branagh didn't direct the sequel and the third movie. With all respect to Taika Waititi, there were people who legitimately wanted Kenneth Branagh to direct all the Thor movies.
And he did a good job.
Yeah.
But I think that even though he didn't stick around, I think he kind of did what he came to do, which was prove that you can tell an adult story. And I mean adult in the highbrow sense of the word. For better or worse use of that term. So
Shakespeare with superheroes.
Yeah, Shakespeare with superheroes. And honestly, that's Shakespeare was, for those who don't know, let me tell you about Shakespeare. We think of Shakespeare now because we're, several hundred years past. We think of Shakespeare as the boring thing you study in school. Shakespeare was the MCU of his day. He was the common mass entertainment. He was the lowbrow entertainment. He was the summer blockbuster. He was, he was the dick and fart joke. I'm sorry, but go back and look in there. You may not immediately understand the wording because it's, a couple of hundred years removed from common speech. If you translate it into common speech, that's what they're saying. It's just sex and fart jokes all the way through. That's all it is. So that's what Kenneth Branagh understands that most people don't, is that when he looks at a Marvel film and he looks at a Shakespeare film, that's why Kenneth Branagh's so good at directing Shakespeare, is because he doesn't look at it and see, like, oh, here's the stuffy thing for the king and queen. He goes like, oh, this is an 800-year-old dick joke. That's the reason why he's such a brilliant Shakespeare director. If you watch those films and you actually understand what's going on, they are hilarious. his Hamlet is hilarious. Like, that's the reason why, like, Robin Williams is in his Hamlet. Because he understands that that scene is hilarious. Because it's meant to be. It's a comedy scene. It's slapstick. And it's full of the same kind of thing that comedians are doing today. He's the one guy that got it at the time. And that's why he was brilliant at it. So when he looks at these things and he goes like, oh, it's a king and it's his son who just wants to get drunk and punch things, and it's his little sniveling schemer son with the greasy hair. Like, he immediately looked at it and went, yeah, I get this. I get this because I've been directing it just, in a different time period. And that's why it works, is because it's the exact same thing. It's just that, sorry, but you ignorant people don't actually understand that.
Well, I gotta make the note here because it's always been the funny thing to me how Hiddleston originally auditioned to play Thor and Hemsworth originally auditioned to play Loki.
Yeah, Hemsworth really had, let's get into the actors here. So we got Chris Hemsworth, of course, as Thor. Everybody should know that by now. Hemsworth coming over from Australia. He had been in an Australian series called Home and Away before coming over and trying to make it in Hollywood. And he had been in Star Trek. He's
the reboot.
Kirk's father. Yeah.
You and I saw that movie in theaters.
Yeah,
Little did we know that this guy who played Captain Kirk's father was going to become Thor, And the same year Thor came out, Hemsworth was in Cabin in the Woods with Josh Wheaton, and we'll talk about him in a few weeks.
He hit it like as soon as he got that Trek role with J.J. Abrams, things started looking up for him.
The connections here, Abrams, Wheaton, all connect Disney.
He fell in with the right crowd at exactly the right time. Mm-hmm. But he had a difficult time getting the role of Thor because his brother, I think it was I can't remember whether it was Luke or Liam, but one of his brothers kept auditioning for Thor as well. And they
Can you imagine how different this would be? That by the time we get to Ragnarok, it's Chris Hemsworth playing fake Thor?
Yeah. And I think that's why they used the brother in Ragnarok in that joke, is because he was also supposed to. So yeah, it was two Hemsworth brothers and Tom Hiddleston, I think, were the three that were kind of going back and forth, vying for. Yeah,
imagine the world how different things would have been if Hiddleston had played Thor.
I've seen some of the test footage.
Yeah, so have I. He got ripped for that audition.
He did, but here's the thing: is that Tom Hiddleston had worked with Kenneth Branagh before in 2 different productions. And Kenneth Branagh was smart enough to be like, dude, I love you, but you're the little Weasley schemer. And I mean that in the best way, because weasels are the best. So he was like, no, you are definitely Loki. Which is absolutely true. And so it kind of bounced back and forth between the Hemsworths, is my understanding. And finally, they settled on Chris. I think it's a good thing they did, because no no shade meant to any of the brothers, because I think they're all actually really fantastic actors. But Chris Hemsworth really has some fantastic comedy chops.
And he was kind of upset that he never really got to do more comedy in these roles, and that's kind of why he originally wanted to leave Marvel after finishing his contract. But then they let him cut loose with Ragnarok, and he's saying he's going to do it as long as he can.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are down on it. I personally loved it, but when he got to do Ghostbusters and he got to be Kevin, he was so brilliant in that role, and I was like, oh man, I really get what people see in him now.
To a lesser extent, Men in Black.
I still haven't seen that one yet. I really need to see that one. Yeah, I hear he's brilliant in that. Natalie Portman as Jane Foster, our love interest and scientist. But everybody knows Natalie Portman. Do we really have to say a lot? Of course, she started off as a child actress in Leon the Professional.
Yeah.
And then, of course, in Star Wars, as Padme, and moving on from there, Black Swan. God, that's such a good movie. And V for Vendetta and all the.
And she's coming back for Thor 4, and I'm really excited for it.
We'll talk about that at the end. I want to say some stuff after we talk about Jane for a bit.
All right.
We talked about Tom Hiddleston as Loki. He had already worked, like I said, with Kenneth Branagh on Wallander. He had done a lot of Shakespeare over in England. He'd done Ivanov with Kenneth Branagh as well on the West End. He'd done a really good production of Coriolanus. And then just Warhorse he did right about the same time as he did Thor. So he did this and then worked with Spielberg in the same year. And then right after this, he went on to do one of the most amazing vampire films I've ever seen called Only Lovers Left Alive.
And it's really Loki that's gotten so much love from the community, from the nerd community, and now we're getting a Loki series with Hiddleston.
But you want to know why Loki gets so much love? I think it's because Hiddleston loves the fans so much.
Hiddleston once walked out on San Diego Comic-Con in full Loki attire, as Loki, just interacting with the fans, and that was amazing.
Where are your Avengers now? Say my name. Say my name. Say my name! Say my name!
He's really embraced that character.
He really has, and I think he's one of those that's like, oh yeah, I will play this until you drag my corpse off a set. So, it's like...
he's one of those characters that he's so good. Him, Robert Downey Jr., and Chris Pratt are so synonymous with those roles that the roles changed. The characters changed to fit the actor. Like, every version of Iron Man now has to be some sort of version of Robert Downey Jr. Every version of Star-Lord has to be some version of Chris Pratt. Every version of Loki now has to be a version of Tom Hiddleston.
Yeah, it's just the comics now are just written to be that film character,
Yeah.
So, Eric Selvig, played by Stellan Skarsgård. I mean, the Skarsgård family. I mean, how are you? He is the father of an acting troupe. I mean, he's got 8 kids, and I think all of them are actors of note.
Yeah.
And I mean, he's in, he's Bootstrap Bill Turner in Pirates of the Caribbean films. He's in Hunt for Red October. He's in Good Will Hunting. He's in the Mamma Mia movies.
I mean, he likes having different kind of roles. He's even said, if he did the same kind of roles every day, he'd be bored. So he just does different roles just to do them.
I mean, just recently, he absolutely was just so amazing in Chernobyl, which is one of the best miniseries I've seen in ages. So, yeah, you can't really pin him down. He does comedies, and then he'll do the most depressing dramas, and then he'll do the goofiest thing ever. He's going to be in the new Dune. He's going to be Vladimir Harkonnen in the new Dune, So I don't know that you can really say anything else about him. I mean, he is the Skarsgård of the Skarsgårds, So as the other member of the team on Earth, we've got Kat Dennings as Darcy,
who has become such a fan favorite character even before WandaVision.
Yeah, and she was honestly kind of the best character in this movie if you don't count Loki. She really became famous at the same time for being in Two Broke Girls. Mm-hmm. But she had been in a few other films before this, like Charlie Bartlett, which was a really good film, and Nick and Nora's Infinite Playlist. But she really, really, really hit it big with Two Broke Girls, and then had her. I think she really thought this was going to be like a small role.
Who knew?
And then it's become like this huge thing.
When it was announced that she was going to come back for WandaVision, more people were more hyped over Kat Dennings being in the show than Elizabeth Olsen, and it was her show.
Yeah. And then speaking of, like I said, bringing the talent over with him, we have Idris Elba as Heimdall. This was such controversy when they announced this casting. How's the black guy gonna be a Norse god?
Well, we also have an Asian man playing a Norse god.
Here's a hint, people. Black people existed in Viking era Norse, like Viking era Norway. There were black people. Because, of course, there were black people. You're racists. Stop being racist with your racism.
And
there were also Asian people. I don't know if you know that, but Asian people existed then too. Yeah, they were there. The thing about being an explorer and going to other places is people and you bring them back with you, and there's cultural trade and stuff, and you intermarry, and then there's people of all different ethnicities, and that's how you get cultural exchange. You racists.
And to the point, Idris Elba.
Also, they're Asgardians. They don't have human races. They can be whatever color you want because it's fiction.
One thing I do praise that the movie is they made the Asgardians aliens, so they can be whatever you want them to be.
I love that rant made my watch go like, you've reached your step count for today. So apparently being anti-racist also gets you exercise.
Burn calories by being anti-racist. But Idris Elba's performance as Heimdall, combined with his growing popularity and his worth in Hollywood, made Heimdall get bigger roles in the later films.
Yeah. But yeah, we really don't really have to say that much about Idris Elba. We've already talked about him before in Zootopia and, all that. So, like we said before, Anthony Hopkins as well playing Odin, because of course, who else are you going to have play Odin? You're going to have Anthony Hopkins.
Yeah.
You're going to have Anthony Hopkins playing Odin. He's the Allfather. Who else are you going to have playing the Allfather? You're going to have Anthony Hopkins. Duh.
Yeah.
And then we have criminally underused in here, but we are going to mention her playing Loki and Thor's mother, Frigga. We have Renee Russo, why wasn't she more used in this? What?
Especially the character's actual mythological origins combined with what we find out in the later films. She was raised by witches. She taught Loki how to do mischief. Give us some of that in these movies.
Yeah, I mean, they do, we'll talk about it later, but, they do have her, pick up a sword and get ready to throw down, and then they kind of don't follow up on that. Why don't they follow up on that, you movie? Anyway.
Yeah.
Renee Russo's great. You should have used her more. Anyway, and then, we got Coulson coming back. Hello, Coulson. And we do have our first sighting of Jeremy Renner, but he doesn't do a lot except a couple of quick little witty lines, but he's only in there for one quick scene. Really blink and you'll miss him. I actually didn't know it was him when I first watched the movie. I didn't know that was supposed to be Hawkeye until later when somebody clued me in.
Yeah, Hawkeye isn't really used to any kind of worth. He was nowhere near his potential in this movie.
Yeah.
He's just there to commentate on the fight that Thor's in.
It's a cameo so that you see him before we get to Avengers.
Yeah.
And then you do, of course, have Sam Jackson come back in the post credits just so that we can tie it all together.
Mm-hmm.
And helping to write this, the incredible J. Michael Straczynski.
Mr. Babylon 5 right there.
Yeah, love him. And of course, he's got a long history with the Marvel comics.
Yeah, of course. So if you're going to get anyone to write this, why not?
Yeah, wrote one of the greatest single-shot Marvel comics in history, which is the Black issue of The Amazing Spider-Man. That was the issue that came out after 9/11, which had the unfortunate thing of trying to explain in the Marvel Universe how could 9/11 happen in a universe that has all of the superheroes. And it handles it beautifully and heartbreakingly from the perspective of Spider-Man and a lot of the other New York-based superheroes. If you've never read it, grab some tissues and go look it up, because it is it's a gut punch, but it is very deftly handled. So anyway, does a good job with some of the story work here. So yeah, let's get into that story work now.
Let's take a pause here. Let's backtrack, because we kind of mentioned it last week. Coulson getting a call that he's been reassigned. Let's take a look at that reassignment for a second, because if you have Captain America, the first Avenger on Blu-ray, there is a short on there called "A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to Thor's Hammer,"
which we have talked about before, but we're going to talk about again, because I will talk about this short all day and twice on Sundays.
This short is to show you how much of a badass Coulson is.
Because honestly, we had not seen that in the films.
Like you said last week, he was just a guy.
His first name is Agent.
Yeah, the badassery came from Black Widow, but this one we really can see that it's all of the agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. that can throw down if need be. Coulson, on his way to New Mexico, stops at a gas station to fill up. he's in there buying snacks because he needs sugar to stay up for the drive.
And I love that Coulson is buying my favorite road trip snack, actually. Those little chocolate-covered donuts.
Which does have some tie-in to the comics, as those back in the olden days, the 60s and 70s, how they would have those one-panel comics where the secret to defeating the bad guy was Hostess Twinkies and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So he's trying to buy donuts, and the place gets robbed. And Coulson, feigning stupidity, that car, the fancy car you saw out there was mine, and you don't want, don't hurt me. I have a gun, but I'm not going to use it, and just proceeds to just throw down and take out both of these robbers single-handedly, like it was nothing. And then he doesn't want any credit for it. He just, the cash register lady says, "What do I tell him?" They'll tell him your Tybo class is paid off. Don't tell him I was here.
Yeah, I absolutely love this short because it is actually the first time that that they really used Clark Gregg to his full potential. And they would later in Avengers, and they would in S.H.I.E.L.D., of course, because that's basically all they would do in S.H.I.E.L.D. But at this point, you're still underestimating Coulson. They're still writing him as a character kind of as a joke.
Mm-hmm.
He looks like a pencil pusher. And in this short, they use that to their advantage, and he uses it to his advantage in the short.
Yeah, up until this point, you've kind of mentioned it before, Clark Gregg was just known as a comedic actor. And this is them really showing him as an action hero.
But the interesting thing is that in real life, Clark Gregg has a black belt in jiu-jitsu. So Clark Gregg actually could throw down. Like, if you ever come up against him, don't think you could take him, because you cannot. But you can actually see him. He's actually doing some wire work and stuff in this short.
Yeah, you see his face in a lot of those shots.
And so it is the first time he's actually doing stunt work in the MCU, which I find really cool. And I love this short because of it, because it blends the Coulson we had been watching prior to this and the Coulson we will eventually get to know in the MCU as the ultimate badass.
Yeah. So let's get into the movie proper this time. So we do get a scene opening up with Jane and Sylvig and Darcy. They're just exploring the Aurora Borealis in New Mexico.
Aurora Borealis. At this time of year, at this time of day, in this part of the country.
Okay, I have a bit of an issue with this scene. It sort of makes sense in the moment if you don't know what the audience knows. But once you know what the audience knows in the rewatch, you're like, wait, no? Okay, so Jane says she's been studying this aurora and that the aurora happens very regularly, right?
Mm-hmm.
She says you can set your clock by it. But we know that this aurora is the Bifrost opening.
Mm-hmm.
So do Asgardians have like a regular commute to New Mexico?
The only thing I can think of is just whenever the Bifrost is in use, the aurora just happens over New Mexico.
Yeah, but why would the Bifrost have been in use that regularly?
Yeah, that I agree with you. That does not make sense.
Okay.
Especially with what we find out later in this movie.
All right.
And then a very swole and cut blonde Englishman falls from the sky and Darcy hits him with a truck.
Australian, but okay.
Yeah. Australian man, there we go. Darcy sure likes hitting people with trucks.
I don't think it's Darcy. I think it's that Thor magnetically attracts automobiles.
That doesn't explain WandaVision.
Oh yeah, but it is Jane that hits him later, so maybe it's a bit of both. So we do have this flashback where Odin narrates that humans used to understand that there were aliens. Except we called them gods.
Yes.
And we used to understand that there were Asgardians and frost giants, Jotuns, and that they used to use us as a battleground because they were dicks.
I want to know if Hela was in part of this war.
Probably. We just didn't see her because she had not been cast yet. But
that's the comic I want to read. Show me an alternate version of this battle with Hela fighting alongside Odin.
Yeah. But we do see Odin fighting Laufey and the Frost Giants. The Frost Giants are trying to take over Earth. I don't know why they would want to. They are using their source power, something called the Casket of Ancient Winters. And I am going to confess something right now. Up until this rewatch, I thought this was the Tesseract. Because it is a blue box that everybody is fighting over, and it looks like a much larger version of the blue box we see in the thing at the end of the movie that Loki also wants. I have spent, 13 years now? 10 years now, however long it's been since this freaking movie.
We just passed the 10-year anniversary of this movie.
Yeah. I have spent 10 years thinking that this has been the exact same blue box. And then in, looking it up, how did the Infinity Gem get from Asgard to Earth for S.H.I.E.L.D. to have it? I found out this was not an Infinity Gem. So.
But we do find out that it is Odin's that is responsible for the Tesseract being on Earth to begin with.
Yeah, later we do. And that was one of the reasons why I continued to think that this was the same thing. Because Odin is responsible for it being there, so I'm just like, oh yeah, he put the blue icy thing on Earth, yeah.
The Asgardians win the war.
Like you do.
And they take the casket and they just put it in their hall of weapons to never be used again. And we kind of get our first look at baby Thor and baby Loki.
Oh.
Yes. I gotta say that the actors they got to play these young versions of those characters look enough like the adult actors that I can buy it.
Yeah, sometimes they don't cast very well, but this one I approve.
But anyway, Odin. Okay, note here. This is the first use of de-aging technology in the Marvel Universe, as they try to make Anthony Hopkins look young. Not so good in this one compared to later films.
I am going to say, in general, a lot of the effects in this kinda.
So Odin talks to his sons how one day one of them will be the king, and we get the first use of Thor not necessarily being a little hot-headed, as he says that when he becomes king, he's going to hunt down all the frost giants and kill them all, because that's what he believes a king does. I'm not sure about the Norse version, but it definitely fits in with the comic version of how Thor was very cocky and full of himself as a young Asgardian. Fast forward to present day, about 1,000 years later, because Asgardians live long, and we see Thor set to be, I assume, to be announced as the new king. Odin is all set to praise him, and again, assuming making him king right then and there. when the frost giants attack. They're gonna get their casket back. They've waited this long, and we get our big bad, our secondary villain of this movie, the Destroyer, who does what his name implies and destroys the invading frost giants. So we get, much like he was in his younger days, Thor wants to go to Jotunheim and destroy all of the frost giants for daring to come to Asgard and trying to invade them and try to steal what they rightfully stolen.
You know, I'm gonna say something. I really like the story arc in general because it is kind of about it's about a privileged dude learning his lesson. Not everything revolves around you, dude. There is a bit of this one's on Odin.
Yeah.
Because Odin keeps talking about, like, boy, you have a lot to learn. And I'm thinking, well, why didn't you teach it to him? Because Thor keeps saying, like, well, this is what a king does. This is what a king does. Why does he think it's what a king does? Well, because he grew up with the story of the frost giants went to Earth and tried to start some shiz. Mm-hmm. Odin stomped them, took what was theirs, brought it here, and that was that. So now they show up and try to take the thing that Odin took. Where in Thor's background or history or teaching is it like, and then we sat down across a table and had a discussion and came to an agreement?
Yeah, again, you've had over 1,000 years to teach this to Thor, and you haven't, Odin.
Yeah, all he's ever heard is the frost giants did something we didn't like. We went over there and stomped a hole. The end.
And we even hear from Loki later is that the frost giants are pretty much treated like the boogeyman, told as ghost stories to children to help them behave. So that's kind of like the entire thing of Asgardian society is frost giants bad, and if you are bad, they will come for you. And they need to be taken care of.
And also, what do we do when frost giants get out of line? Odin goes and stomps in their head. Like,
yeah.
What other way does Thor have to be? Like, what model have you given Thor to be as a king?
The only explanation we get is Thor saying, you're thinking like a warrior, you're not thinking like a king. That's it. That's all we get. It feels like he raised his son to be a warrior and is upset that his son is thinking like a warrior.
But Odin was king when he defeated the frost giants in that battle. Mm-hmm. That is how a king acts. I mean, according to Thor, if that's... Yeah. So it's hard. While I do like it, it's like this one to me is on Odin. If you want Thor to act in a different way, model a different way for him to be. Yeah, and that party that we have just seen Thor have, does that not remind you of, like, my egregious Sweet 16 or whatever that show was called?
Something like that.
Yeah, like, it's like Thor's like, but I've been waiting my whole life for this. This was my day, Dad. Like,
they spoiled my special day.
A hammer and a convertible, and like, all my friends were gonna be there. Becky was gonna give me a kiss. Like, it was gonna make Loki so jealous.
But in this sense, Loki agrees with Thor, or at least at this point, he's saying that he agrees with Thor.
He publicly agrees with Thor.
Yeah, you're right. They broke the treaty. We need to teach them a lesson, but we can't because it is against our rules to go to Jotunheim. We can't go. Enter Lady Sif and the Warriors 3, Thor's buddies, and they're all, yeah, we're gonna do whatever you say, Thor. Yeah, let's go to Jotunheim. Let's go kick all the Frost Giants' butts. So that's their plan. They're gonna go to Jotunheim. They're gonna beat up all the Frost Giants for daring to come onto their land. As soon as they get there, Heimdall, who sees all, yeah, I know what you're doing, and no one's not going to like what you're doing. And besides, you need to wear a jacket because it's cold in Jotunheim. I just love Heimdall in these movies. He's like, yeah, you know, you're going to, I know what you're going to do. I'm not going to stop you, but I don't think you should do it.
And Idris Elba is so perfectly cast for this because he has that kind of deep, authoritative voice, but he's also just cheeky enough to be like, but I still know what you're doing. You know, like,
yeah. A very dry humor that Idris Elba has in this movie.
Yeah, it's so perfect for this. Like, you know.
Well, I have to follow the rules of my king, and the king says, I cannot open the Bifrost. I cannot open the Bifrost. Never said you couldn't open the Bifrost. And just leaves the sword, the Bifrost sword, in there for them to use and just go off.
It's a good thing the Bifrost has auto recall, you know?
Yeah.
Like...
It's also the note here that is it here where we learn that Heimdall cannot leave the gate open? Otherwise, the full force of the Bifrost would destroy the realm? Or is that later?
You know, I don't even remember them saying that in the movie. I remember that just coming as a, like, WTF at the end of the film.
So, yeah, they say, well, if you're going, it's a one-way trip. I'm not going to bring you back. And they said, well, just leave the door open for us. I can't. The Bifrost is a freaking laser. If I leave the laser on, it will destroy the realm. No. Which comes back later in the movie. But, yeah, he walks away, coincidentally leaving the sword in the Bifrost, which opens up to Jotunheim, which lets our warriors straight to Jotunheim, and they're going to get ready to throw down.
Yeah, and he tells them, he's like, you know, but remember, I have to protect Asgard, so if you coming back would endanger this place, you're not coming back. There you go. There's a battle.
Well, we have to get there. Hold on. There's a note we gotta get there first. Is that Laufey tries to kind of get Thor to leave. It's like, you don't want to fight. If you fight, you'll die. We can have a peace here. The people that attack your realm or outsiders, they don't work for me. I had nothing to do with that. We don't have to have a fight. And at first it works. Thor starts to walk away. Until one of the Frost Giants decides to go after his manhood. Go home, little princess. And Loki goes, God damn it.
There is one thing Thor cannot abide, and that is homophobia.
Yep. And then we have the big battle between our warriors, our Asgardian warriors, and all of the Frost Giants.
Well, Laufey does drop one other thing. He does say there are traitors in the House of Odin.
Yeah.
Which does become important later. But yeah, there's a big throwdown. This actually does hold up. A lot of CGI, but the CGI mostly holds up. It is mostly in darkness, though. But you can still follow it. It does hide a lot of sins, I'm assuming.
During the skirmish here, one of the Frost Giants grabs Loki, and they specifically say, "Don't let the Frost Giants touch you. You're free."
Because one of the Warriors 3 gets burned by the cold of their touch, and when Loki gets touched, he turns blue, but it doesn't burn him.
So yeah, there's something that look something's going on, and Loki needs answers. But he kills the frost giant before anything happens.
I like that, there's a big chase sequence. They're surrounded by frost giants. Thor takes down a particularly monstrous frost giant in a pretty cool way using the hammer. They're calling for Heimdall. Heimdall ain't answering. They're like, oh crap, we're all gonna die. And then Odin shows up.
Riding his grandson horse?
Yeah, here's the thing is I didn't realize that was Sleipnir for the longest time. And I was like, oh, that's Sleipnir. So Loki got his Loki on in the MCU. Fun.
Yeah, so that would be a movie right there. Loki turning into the horse and giving birth to the horse.
I don't want to see that. Please don't show me that in the Loki series. I do not want to see the birth of Sleipnir in the Norse mythology. You are effed up, and I do not want to see all of you.
This is the inspiration for Santa Claus.
The interesting thing is that later in the movie, Loki is writing Sleipnir, so
Loki is writing his son.
Yeah. Come, son, we must destroy Jotunheim. But anyway,
Odin has the words with Laufey, hey, my son is just a boy. What you heard was the words of a boy. We don't want no trouble.
He's a particularly ignorant and ridiculous boy. Can we call it even? Sorry about that.
They let him go. To which Thor is just ticked off. It's like, how could you let that happen? What happened to the warrior I've heard from the stories? We would have fought them together, Father. Take them all out. And Odin just goes to town on him. No, this is, I didn't teach you to be this way, blah, 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 blah. You're reckless, and you almost got your friends killed. You almost started another war with Asgard. And strips him of his powers, strips him of his warrior rank, and strips him of his title of prince. It is at this point that we get the famous enchantment on Mjolnir. Whoever be worthy can lift the hammer and gain the power of Thor. The word unworthy is said a lot in this stripping of power, stripping of armor, stripping of everything. Just to get the drive the point home to the audience that, he is no longer worthy of his powers. And just cast him out towards Earth, no longer to be in Asgard anymore. But there's one more point that we skipped over, is that as Odin is talking to Laufey, we see that he's starting to nod off. He's starting to fade away. Even as he's taking the power away from Thor, it's taking a lot out of him. Odin needs to rest, and he's used up too much of his power. And we find out later he goes into the Odin sleep to recharge his power.
Man, I could use a good Odin sleep right now.
The Kiki sleep. And we pick up back where we left off as Thor gets hit by the truck.
Yeah, and we see Mjolnir falling down to Earth not far away, where we know Coulson will find it fairly soon.
Yeah.
Let's
kind of break down that whole scene with the stripping of the power. It's just, it looks really good. I'm gonna say, taking off the shields on his chest, ripping the cape off, blasting his armor completely, shattering that armor.
Each individual scale of his armor falling away. That really holds up. That effect. And then he kind of just falls to Earth like basically in like a t-shirt,
Under Armour. Not the
Yeah.
brand Under Armour, but literal Under Armour. And they take him to a hospital where he still says, I'm Thor. Where's my hammer? Get tased by Darcy.
Yeah. Gets shot in the butt.
Yeah.
A literal, sedative into his gluteus.
Well, as of right now, Thor is mortal. He has no power. He is a mortal human being, which
he's a very strong human being because he's got muscles for days. I mean, he's throwing people around pretty hardcore.
And he still has the training of being a fighter in Asgard. He just no longer has godlike strength and godlike immortality. But that whole setup is straight from the comic. He went to Jotunheim. He almost started a war, and Thor banished him to Earth to learn humility. Only in this film, he doesn't become a disabled doctor named Donald Blake.
Yeah. Although the name Donald Blake does get name checked a few times. They drop him off at the hospital and they leave again. Our lovely Earth team, Jane and Darcy and Selvig. They have their little run-in with Shield.
Yeah.
This is the part of the movie I don't like, honestly.
Okay, go ahead.
Because it sets up Coulson as a bad guy, which he has never actually been. But in this movie, he's kind of villainous.
Yes, it's the whole, government taking away research because they don't want it's the government property now. You can't have it. I understand that. Even the way they talk about, even the way Selvig talks about S.H.I.E.L.D., hey, you don't want to mess with these guys.
But Coulson becomes the face of the faceless, Men in Black kind of thing.
There's a nice little nod to Banner. Apparently Selvig knows Banner. Because
this is one of those nods to the Norton Hulk film being canon, like we mentioned before.
Yeah, Selvig mentions he knew a scientist that was an expert in gamma, that he's kind of fallen off the map because of S.H.I.E.L.D., which again saw the previous movie. Technically, this is happening at the same time, but we'll ignore that for now.
Well, he had fallen off the map because of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah.
Just
a few days later, he'll pop up in Harlem and fight the Abomination. That hasn't happened yet.
But Jane comes back to her lab to find them clearing the place out, and Coulson's like, nope, we got to take all this. This is now the property of the government. Here's a check. Good luck rebuilding everything. To which she says she can't.
Yeah, all the stuff that she has, she built herself. She can't just buy it. She buys it at Radio Shack. Oh, Radio Shack.
Plus, all of her data, and she says it's either on those hard drives or in my notebook, and holds up a notebook, and they just snatch it out of her hand.
Yeah.
And she tries to clock a guy. I mean, good for her.
Yeah.
But they have to hold her back because she tries to take the block off a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent, actually.
All while a group of people are trying to pull this hammer. Only Americans would trying to pick up Thor's hammer into a freaking tailgate party. Because you see people cooking hot dogs and having a good old time, and everyone's cheering when people fail at picking up the hammer.
Yeah, and we get our Stan Lee cameo here, as well as a J. Michael Straczynski cameo.
Stan Lee is not worthy to carry Mjolnir. Or should I say Stan Lee's truck is not worthy to carry Mjolnir.
Yeah, it is really his truck.
And we get the scene from Iron Man 2 where Coulson said we found it. Jane and the crew go back to the hospital, try to find Thor, but he's kind of broken out already.
Yeah, well, they go to find him because he's now their only evidence
that any of this happened. Yeah.
Yeah, because all of their data has been lost, but he was inside the event. He was inside the wormhole or whatever it was.
Yeah. They call it a storm, but then they look at their data, it's like, it's a wormhole.
Yeah.
And wherever this wormhole started from, he came from it, and they need to ask him questions.
And fortunately, she hadn't really written it down yet, so S.H.I.E.L.D. doesn't know about him yet.
Nope.
So if they get to him before S.H.I.E.L.D. does, they're one step ahead.
And then they hit him again with the truck.
Yeah, I like that she goes like, we're just gonna drive around till we find him, and then she backs right into him. It's such a great joke. It makes me laugh every time. I dare you not to laugh at that joke.
And they get him some clothes. Here we get our mention of Donald Blake. Turns out it was Jane's ex, but it's the only clothes that she has that fits Thor. Apparently, the real life Donald Blake in this scenario was buff because has those kind of clothes.
Yeah. We get a lot of really uncomfortable ogling of Thor's body, which I really don't like this scene because both Darcy and Jane are really, really creepy about it.
Especially Darcy, like, hey, he's cut.
But even Jane is a little leery. I don't know. I really don't like this. Seriously, if it is creepy for a guy to do to a woman, can we not have a woman do it to a man? I really don't like it. It works both ways. Don't do it.
Yeah, then they're gonna try to get their stuff back on Asgard.
But he actually complains. He says my mortal body is weak and I need food. Like, he's shocked by it.
Loki has questions of what happened on Jotunheim, so he goes to get the frost casket, only to be interrupted by Odin.
It's a magic ice maker. Can we stop calling it a frost casket? It's a magic ice maker.
So yeah, nice effects of actually having Loki having blue skin.
Yeah, that effect also holds up.
Odin tells him the truth. The casket wasn't the only thing I took from Jotunheim that day. There was a baby, an abandoned child, small by Frost Giant standards, but Laufey's son. Laufey abandoned his own son because he was small, and I took the baby and adopted him as my own, and it's you. I took you in, I raised you as my son, I love you as my son, and Loki just doesn't want to hear it. Loki is so blinded with jealousy and rage and just confusion over the whole thing that he just berates his father, or the man that he grew up knowing as his father. Just, that's why you love Thor, that's why you wanted to make him king, because he's actually yours, not me. That's why you're so jealous of me, blah, 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 blah. And this whole thing is just so overwhelming to Odin that he just passes out into the Odin sleep right then and there.
I've got a feeling, though, that, like, Odin just does that whenever anything gets uncomfortable. Frigga's like, did you do the dishes? And he's like, you can't talk now, Odin sleep.
Possibly.
I do kind of feel for Loki, because like we said before, think about how they talk about the Frost Giants. You said it yourself. The Frost Giants are the monster hiding under the bed, as far as Asgard is told. Mm-hmm. Be good little kids, or the Frost Giants are going to come get you. So what does that make Loki? Yeah, Odin can say, you're my son all you want, but we saw in their childhood, Thor is the one that's going to be king. They're kind of told explicitly, Loki, you're not the one that's going to be king. Thor's going to be the one that's going to be king. Mm. And then now it's like, oh, well, not only am I not the one that's going to be king, which I had kind of accepted, now I'm the monster under the bed. Once again, Odin can say, yeah, you're my son. Yeah, we always loved you. Yeah, well, but I don't know if I would buy it either if I were Loki. I don't want to be like, Loki's always right. Loki never did anything wrong, because that's not true. But
Odin didn't help, really.
Again, it's kind of on Odin, because if Odin had this plan of Loki is one day going to grow up and unite the people, why not prepare Loki for that? Loki, you will not have the throne of Asgard, but you will have the throne of Jotunheim. You will be the peacemaker. One day...
He had 1,000 years to mold both of his sons into what they should be. You know, he had 1,000 years to teach Thor how to be a proper king, and he had 1,000 years to teach Loki how to be a peacekeeper between the two realms. He didn't have to raise him to say, "Oh, you're going to be the king of Jotunheim." He said, "You are the one that's going to bring everlasting peace between the two realms, and I'm going to teach you how you're going to do it." Thor, you're going to be the king of Asgard. I'm going to teach you how to be a peaceful king. He doesn't do that at all.
He's just like, you two go play. I'm going to Odin sleep.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, it's what he does every time.
Let's get back to New Mexico as Thor tries to learn Earth ways. And
we're eating pancakes.
We get the famous, "I love this drink." Another smashes the cup, and because that's what you do in Asgard. You drink from the cup and then you destroy the cup. We actually see this later in the movie, where the Warriors 3 are drinking from the cup and they smash them, because that's what you do in Asgard. There's a deleted scene that I wish they kept in the movie of Thor bringing the waitress a new coffee cup, saying, "I'm sorry I broke your coffee cup, here's a new one."
Yeah, I really like that scene. It's one of my favorite deleted scenes.
Yeah. I understand why they cut it, but it kind of shows that Thor has grown as a person during his time on Earth.
Yeah.
But it's also, you know, the cute thing is Thor doesn't really know what a camera is, but here's Darcy with her cell phone telling him to smile, and he just smiles. Like, Thor just smiles whenever someone tells him to smile. It's a meme, but yeah.
I like that Thor is never defensive. Like, he's been humbled enough once he gets to Earth. He is never defensive at this point. He's defensive in Asgard. But once he's among humans, he started to realize, like, oh, I have something to learn. I better shut up and learn it. So when they tell him he has done something wrong, he has given offense, he doesn't argue with them.
He does give his explanation.
My question, explain to me how I have given offense. Maybe. But he doesn't go like, "No, I didn't give offense. How dare you take offense at that?" You know, he just goes like, "Oh, I'm sorry. It was not my intent to give offense. How can I make up for it? You know, I won't do it again."
Another writer, another superhero movie would have painted Thor as in the right for breaking it, and this is just my culture. This is what I do. But I'm glad that they did actually address it in this movie. You know, it may be your culture,
by
but
the end
not
of
our
the scene, everybody would have been breaking. You know, the whole diner would have been breaking cups and, you know, all that kind of stuff. No. He learns that that's not what you do here.
Maybe what you do where you come from, but here we have different rules.
Yeah.
And it's also
no, I like that it's part of his growth. He is learning to mold himself. Other people are not learning to mold to him. He is not proven right. He is proven to need to learn.
And it is at this point where our team here, our Earth team here, is made aware of a government satellite that has crashed outside of town, and everyone's trying to pick it up, and the government's there to kind of gather their fallen satellite. Thor knows what's up. This ain't no satellite. It's my hammer. I'm gonna go get my thing. And we get another meme that has lasted the test of time. Darcy calling it meow meow. To this day, there are people who still refer to it as Meow Meow. Because that's how much Darcy is loved as a character.
But when he first does say it, it does kind of sound like that.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was in the original script or he just said it and she made fun of him one day and they were like, that's funny, and
we're keeping it.
Yeah,
and that actually comes back in the sequel too.
Yeah.
That is one thing I wish that they would have somehow put that in WandaVision of her calling it Meow Meow.
Yeah.
Who knows? But yeah, and
maybe it'll come back in the fourth movie. Maybe there'll be a scene with her and Jane where she'll be like, you picked up Meow Meow.
So yeah, Thor is on his way to get Mjolnir. Sylvik takes Jane aside and saying, "Hey, this guy's nuts. This guy thinks he's the god of thunder. This guy thinks he's going to get the Thor's hammer from out there. You might want to watch yourself. This guy's dangerous. This guy's nuts.
He's full of red flags. Please, please take the warning."
As we find out later, Sylvik knew Jane's father and has kind of become protective of Jane because of it.
Thor, he wanders off to try to find it. He thanks her. Mm-hmm. But they part ways, Yeah. And she decides to not go with him at this point in time. And she sees him trying to buy a large cat to ride.
Yeah.
So she's like, well, he's not going to get there on his own. I'll give him, I'll give him a ride.
Yeah. Meanwhile on Asgard, the Warriors, Sif and the Warriors are going to Odin to try to undo the banishment, and Loki is on the throne. That he will be acting king while Odin is in the Odin sleep, saying that his first act as acting king cannot be to undo the last order of the previous king, because it's not going to look good for him to circumvent his father's wishes.
Sorry, he probably Odin's sleeping. Please leave a message.
And I'm not going to bring him back. That's it.
This leads to one of my favorite jokes. As soon as they get out of Loki's presence, they're like, we've got to help Thor. They're like, but we can't go against Loki. And then somebody goes, quiet, Heimdall could be listening. And then all of a sudden a guy shows up and he's like, Heimdall wants to see you. Like immediately. And it leads to my other kind of favorite moment as Loki goes in to talk to his mother, who is keeping vigil over the sleeping Odin. Frigga kind of lets it drop that Thor's probably not gone forever. If Odin banished him, he probably was doing it to teach Thor a lesson in order for Thor to come back. I like the way that Hiddleston plays this moment, because Loki gets a look on his face like, oh, damn, I am gonna have to kill him.
You want something done right, do it yourself.
Yeah, there's just this moment of like, oh, nothing can be easy for me. I just really like that moment. Very, very good. Sif and the Warriors 3 end up going to Heimdall, and Heimdall's like, well, I cannot go against my king. That would be really bad if I went against my king. Can't open the Bifrost. Nope. Can't send you to Thor. Nope. I'm gonna wander over here. Yep.
It's like early in the movie. I can't let you go through. But nothing says you can't let yourself through.
But if the Bifrost were to happen to open right now, and open to New Mexico accidentally while my back was turned. So Sif and the Warriors go to Earth. But
as this is happening, Thor and Jane have made it to the crash site, and Thor just no plan. He's just gonna bum rush the U.S. government and take his hammer, and he's gonna fly out, and he says, I'm gonna grab all your stuff, and everything's gonna be back to
Jane's
it.
like, oh wow, you really are crazy.
Even calling Sylvie saying, yeah, you know that thing you told me not to do? I did it.
Yeah, sorry.
And Thor just takes down all of S.H.I.E.L.D. single-handedly. They call in Hawkeye, who just says, give me an order and I'll take him out. You're not going to give me an order. I'm just going to root for this guy. Thanks, Hawkeye. We'll see you in 2 movies.
Yeah, it really is a rather pathetic and pointless intro to Hawkeye. That is one of my problems with this movie, is that they really do Hawkeye dirty.
They do Hawkeye dirty for a lot of these movies. Even Rainer has complained about this. Like, I read the comics. This is not the character I was hired to play. But the one thing is that you get Coulson very interested in Thor. I want to see where this goes. And
well, would you not be interested too if like just one lone dude shows up in the middle of the night and just lays waste to all your best agents? And
I'm curious. I'll be curious myself. He finally makes it to Mjolnir and he cannot lift it.
And then he just like has a meltdown.
Well, that was his plan. He's gonna go there, get the hammer, and get out.
But I mean, if you're watching from Coulson's perspective, here's a guy you've never seen before, who takes out like 20 of your best dudes, makes it to the target, stands there, seems absolutely certain that something is about to happen, and then has a meltdown when nothing happens. That's fascinating.
They cuff him up. They take him into custody. They just question him. Where'd you get your training? Who are you? Where did you come from? And Thor is just silent, saying nothing. Just because he's been defeated. He has realized at this moment he is still unworthy of the power. And he doesn't know what to do.
Yeah, he's a warrior. He's just beat the enemy. And if that doesn't make him worthy, what does? Coulson leaves him alone to go answer a phone call, and Loki shows up.
Loki shows up telling him, Dad's dead, and I'm the king now, and because Dad died while you were banished, I can't undo it, and you're banished forever.
Also, Mom says she doesn't love you anymore, and I get your bedroom and all of your stuff.
And all your friends hate you, and the girl you like kissed me, and I'm awesome, and you're not. Bye!
Yeah, it's a really petty scene on Loki's part.
Sif said you're a poo-poo head. Bye.
Yeah.
And he tries to lift the hammer himself. And obviously, he is not worthy. But he doesn't crash. He doesn't complain he doesn't break down like Thor does. He just buttons up his jacket and walks away. Of course this wasn't going to work. All right, gotta do it the hard way.
I think that's one thing I kind of admire about Loki is that, like, if one of his plans goes awry, he just kind of, let's rethink, replan, Find
plan
a
A
new
didn't
tactic.
work. Time for plan B.
Yeah.
All the while, Sylvig has checked out a children's book from the Library of Norse Mythology, and they're reading it, and apparently Jane now believes that he's the real god of thunder or something. Because they see Mjolnir, they see Jotunheim, they see all of the stuff, trying to put together that he might be the god of thunder. I'm not sure.
Well, her argument is that you can't rule it out, Science fiction can become science fact. Magic can just be science that we don't yet understand.
And that is something that Thor says later in the movie.
Yeah.
What you call magic, my people call science.
When Jane called Selvig, she said, if you don't hear from me in a certain amount of time, come out to the crash site and try to find me, because something will have gone very wrong. And Selvig does just that. And he discovers that Thor has been captured.
Mm-hmm.
And he comes up with a pretty good plan.
I don't know who he knows, but he got a fake ID with Thor's picture on it, the same picture that Darcy took,
Yeah.
with an ID saying he's Donald Blake. Saying, hey, he's one of our assistants. He's Donald Blake. He's
You just destroyed our research. He got drunk. He went a little nuts. Can you really blame him? You guys are dicks. Come on. And Coulson's like, yeah, that's fair. We are dicks.
I mean, at least Coulson's aware of this.
Yeah.
And they let him go. Like, hey, just don't let your guy drink anymore, and we'll be fine. Let's go to the bar and drink. And the two bond over beers, as you do. And for someone who no longer has godlike endurance, he can still drink another man under the table, as he does with Selvig here. Yeah, he brings him back. Hey, Jane is like, what happened to Selvig? Nah, he's just drunk. Oh, by the way, I got your book back. It was the only thing I could grab, but I got your book back. It's a start. Meanwhile, since Plan A of getting the hammer didn't work, Plan B is Loki goes to Jotunheim and makes a deal with Laufey. Like, I will open the forbidden gates again, like I did before. Bring you and your people to Asgard to take it over completely. And because my father's a dick, my brother's a dick, and I want them all dead. Heimdall kind of gets involved. Hey, I didn't open the Bifrost. How did you get on Jotunheim? And how come I wasn't able to know what you were doing on Jotunheim? What's your game, Loki?
And Loki just starts slinging shade. Like, well, maybe your eyes have gone bad, old man.
Yep.
Maybe you're not as smart as you think you are. Maybe I'm just awesome.
There's more than one way to get between the realms, as we will find out in later movies.
Yeah.
We get the heart-to-heart between Thor and Jane, telling him about Asgard, how, what you believe to be magic, I believe to be science.
The World Tree, the Bifrost, Thor kind of lays it all out, which is really sweet of him.
S.H.I.E.L.D. is trying to figure out what's going on. They find out that the idea that they had of Dr. Donald Blake is fake, so they just let a fugitive go, and they need to get this fugitive back. So right now, we're setting up everything to get all the main players in one place at one time, because we need to get to the climax of this movie. So we get the Warriors just jump into Jane's lab, where, hey, Thor, buddy, we found you. Let's take you home. Can't go home. Dad's dead. Loki told me. Yeah, Loki was lying. Your dad's just sleeping. We're gonna take you home now. We're gonna, explain everything to the old man, and maybe he'll give you your toy back, and then we can be friends and buddies and hang out again. But this doesn't go well, because, again, now that the Destroyer is let loose on Earth, also the Frost Giants have invaded Asgard and froze Heimdall, so now he can't open the Bifrost.
Well, no, I like that it's Loki that actually freezes Heimdall in one of the coolest little moments. I kind of wish that I could have seen a bit more of like a fight between them, like an actual duel. But this is more in keeping with Loki's character. Heimdall goes to...
Loki's not really known as a fighter.
Yeah, but I like that Heimdall goes to swing his sword, and Loki just kind of makes the casket appear, the little ice maker, and freezes him. and then just disappears the ice maker and just walks off like nothing happened.
I like the thing here is, well, what was it? Heimdall, you've been relieved of your duties. Well, if I no longer have a job, that means you're no longer my boss, which means I don't have to do a damn thing you say.
Yeah.
Which is badass delivery from Idris Elba here.
Yeah, it was really good. I liked it.
And also the look of Loki going full frost as he's using the ice maker on Heimdall. That needs to... I'm surprised that hasn't happened more in the later films. Though that either has to be a lot of CG or Tom Hiddleston in a makeup chair for a long time getting that blue paint on him.
Yeah, I don't really know which, honestly. Probably a little bit of both. Probably some makeup that's enhanced by CG.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the Destroyer comes down to Earth, and I love the scene where they introduce the Destroyer, where it just walks up to these S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, and they're like, oh, is this another Stark thing? Coulson's like, how am I supposed to know? The man never tells me anything. He's so like up his own butt, you know?
Stark hates me anyway. Why would he tell me anything?
Yeah. I just love that Coulson's just whining about Stark. Because you know that in the timeline, this is like 24 hours after he's been babysitting Stark.
So yeah, the Destroyer comes, attacks everybody.
The Warriors and Sif are the ones that really have to fight it, because Thor knows he is not strong enough to even slow it down.
It looks like they're able to get the upper hand until they don't, because it looks like the Destroyer can alter its body shape and just kicks the crud out of the Warriors like they were nothing.
But I like that this is the first sacrifice Thor makes. He has wanted to be nothing more than a warrior. And this is the first time that he says, no, you go fight, you go get the glory. I will stay here and evacuate the town and make sure the people are safe.
And after all of this, the Warriors still want to keep fighting, knowing that they're outgunned by the Destroyer. Sif especially is like, I want to fight. I'm going to die a warrior's death. They'll sing my praises. They'll tell stories about me. And then you see Thor looking at his friend's face saying, you live. You tell those stories yourself. Get out of here. He's yelling, Loki, I know you can hear me. If killing me will end this violence, do it. Leave these people alone. You want me dead, kill me. And as this is happening, the Destroyer destroys. And it's almost like Odin is aware of what's going on, because you see the one tear back in Asgard of Odin's as all this is happening, which is apparently enough to have Thor regain the worthiness as the hammer flies up into the sky into Thor's hand.
By the power of Asgard!
As he becomes a god again. And the scene is really good. I mean, I'm not doing that scene justice.
Yeah, I like that Jane is crying over his body.
Because for all intents and purposes, he should be dead.
Well, no, he is dead. And Selvig has to... He realizes that the hammer is flying toward them, and he grabs Jane and pulls her away. Because when the hammer hits, so does lightning. And I'm like, oh, that would have sucked if there'd have been nobody there to pull Jane away. And Thor would have been like, I'm worthy, and my girlfriend's charred corpse. Oh dear.
Yeah. Once again in his armor, he's full godhood, and he just goes to town on the Destroyer. It's a great fight scene, even though it's mostly CG with the Destroyer and, you know, a few close-ups of Chris Hemsworth swinging the hammer around. But the fight doesn't really last that long. Like as soon as Thor regains his power, it's only a matter of time before the destroyer is destroyed.
Well, because this isn't really the fight.
Yeah.
But we
still have a half an hour left in this movie.
Yeah, he takes out the destroyer, which is quickly scooped up to S.H.I.E.L.D. And I never really realized it until looking into it for this, but this becomes a very important piece of technology later.
Yep. The Furious Big Week comic actually shows the S.H.I.E.L.D. retrieving the destroyer, experimenting on it, seeing how it works, and we see that they end up like most governments, when they find new technology, they turn it into a weapon.
Yep. But he asks, Thor asks Jane, "Do you want to see that wormhole that you've been trying to study?" And she's like, "Yes, please." So he grabs her and flies away with her. The rest of the team, I guess, zip along in a truck because they're all end up there at the same time. And the Asgardians prepare to leave, and they're like, "Hey, Heimdall, open the Bifrost," and nothing happens. They're like, "Hey, Heimdall, Heimdall,"
and
we're like,
late.
"Oh yeah, oh yeah, Heimdall's frozen." But nothing can contain the power of Idris Elba, who burst through the ice through the power of sheer awesome, and then just completely plows through a couple of frost giants and opens the Bifrost and brings back the Asgardians. But before he leaves, Thor is like, "I am going to come right back for you, Jane. You stand right here, wait for me." And she kisses him, and they leave, and Thor gets back, and he's like, "Loki, you got some splaining to do." And
But Loki has other things to worry about, because Laufey has entered Odin's chamber. As we mentioned before, Frigga tries to defend Thor and is knocked in one throw.
She's standing in front of Odin, and she's got a sword. She's like, "Don't worry, Odin, I will defend you." Never mind.
They did Frigga dirty in these movies.
Yeah, I do not like this scene at all, because I'm like, "Oh, we're gonna get a throwdown. This is gonna be great. You go." And then like, no, it does not happen.
So yeah, he is going to kill. He opens up the one good eye of Odin, saying, "Because I want you to see this happen, and I'm going to kill you." And this is all part of Loki's plan, because Loki kills his biological father right then and there to try to gain favor. Like, hey, basically what Thor was going to do. "I killed the frost giants. I'm awesome. I should be king." But Thor's back and tells everyone, "Hey, Loki tried to have me killed. So this is all part of a big plan to get me killed and get Dad killed so he can be king."
Yeah, the interesting thing is Loki's plan works for about 4 seconds.
Yeah.
Because Frigga's like, "Loki, you saved your father. Yay!" And then Thor's like, "Yeah, but did he though? Or did he invite the frost giants in an attempt to try to kill me and then like win favor with you and maybe still probably murder Odin later, or
I'm going to do what you couldn't do, Thor. And I'm going to do what Dad didn't want to do. I'm going to destroy Jotunheim by pulling the full force of the Bifrost onto Jotunheim. Yeah, I'm awesome. I'm going to destroy Jotunheim." And
so he sets the Bifrost to 11 and waits for it to blow up.
So, and Thor cannot turn it off some way.
For reasons.
Knowing there's a nice little fight between Thor and Loki. Loki using his deceptiveness making it look like he's going to fall off. Help me, brother. Help me. I'm going to fall off. And it turns out he's behind him, stabs him with the Odin staff. Though Loki is quickly taken down by Thor, and I just love that here. You stay right here by putting the hammer right on him. Like, come on, man. Get this off me.
Have you ever seen that comic where, like, Thor puts the hammer on top of the lid of the toilet?
Yes.
And, like, one of the other Avengers is, like, doing the pee dance. Like, come on, Thor!
I think it's Spider-Man that's doing that.
Yeah, it's like... that's what I always think of when I see this scene. Like,
so it's like, well, Thor doesn't really have a lot of options. He can turn the Bifrost off, but he can't allow Jotunheim to be destroyed. So he summons the hammer back to him and destroys the Bifrost bridge. All while Loki's like, no, you can't do this. If you destroy the bridge, you'll never see her again. Is that really worth it? And we've seen it. Thor at the beginning of the movie probably wouldn't destroy the bridge because, again, selfish Thor would want to see the girl again. And
also he didn't care about the frost giants. Who cares if every frost giant dies?
Yeah. But now he's gotten wiser. He understands.
And he says you can't destroy an entire race. But at the beginning of the movie, that was his plan.
Yeah. He
was going to kill every last frost giant.
He's grown as a person. Yeah. So Thor destroys the Bifrost. Jotunheim is safe, but there's probably still damage there. But we never
see quite a large number of frost giants being killed earlier in the scene. Yeah.
Yeah. As this because of the destruction of the Bifrost, Loki and Thor both fall off, but they are saved as Daddy Odin catches them with the staff, trying to bring his boys back up. Loki tried to say, I did it for you, Dad. I did this for you.
I learned it by watching you.
Yeah. And he says, no, Loki, this is not the way. And Loki said, all right, I'm out.
Peace out.
Peace out. Falls into the void, presumably dead because he just falls into the void. He falls into the void of the Bifrost with no destination, so they assume he's dead.
That's a silly thing, too.
And we'll never see Loki again.
Yeah.
We'll wait 5 minutes.
Well, with Loki gone, everybody has a party.
And meanwhile, on Earth, they see that the Aurora has faded. Meaning, they don't know. I mean, again, Thor didn't come back. There's no more Aurora. Yeah. According to them, they probably think Thor's dead.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, on Asgard, there's a big party. Hey, we had this great battle. Let's party. Let's eat. Let's smash cups after we drink out of them. Let's tell war stories. And we kind of see the growth of Thor. That he also starts to drink, and he starts to throw the cup down like everyone else does, but he just sits it down like, no, I'm not going to do that anymore.
Yeah. And he goes to Heimdall one last time, and he says, can you see her? And Heimdall says, she's searching for you. And we cut to Earth, and we see that, indeed, Jane has been given all of her research back by S.H.I.E.L.D. and all of her equipment, and she and a team are searching for a way to open the portal again.
We see the last shot we see of Jane is her looking at her watch and smiling because, as we know, that Aurora comes at the same time every day, thinking that maybe this will be the time that Thor comes back.
Yeah.
Poor Jane.
Yeah. So it smash cuts to credits in a really just disorienting way.
But the Foo Fighters song.
This is an awesome Foo Fighters song. You do not disrespect the Foo Fighters in my presence.
Foo Fighters exist in the MCU.
Yes, they do. The post-credits scene is Selvig has been recruited by S.H.I.E.L.D. to study a mysterious object, which we now know is the Tesseract. Nick Fury is like, hey, don't you want to take a look at this? And Selvig is like, yes, I do. And we see that Loki is the one going, yes, yes.
Yeah, we find out that Loki is now controlling Selvig to get him into S.H.I.E.L.D., to get him to the Tesseract. Why? We'll find out. We'll find that out in a few weeks.
Yep.
So that's the first Thor movie. Let's bring the question back here. Does Thor 1 still have the magic? Kiki.
Yeah, it's got its flaws, but it's a serviceable film. So yeah, I say it still has the magic.
I say it does as well. There are parts that do slog, but when it starts really going through the second half of this movie, it's really good, and it's the start of all of these characters that we would follow for the next 10 years. Thor, Loki, and all of them. And to see that the growth of Thor, not just in this movie, but the movies that follow this one, from him, him with Jane, him learning about being a king, him relinquishing the throne at the end of all of this just to find himself, something he's never done. This is the start of it, and as a start of what would come with Thor, definitely has the magic.
I personally think the Asgardian plot is better than the Earth plot.
Same. But they needed to have that Earth element. Again, they're still learning. This is still the Paramount era of the MCU. We haven't really gotten to the Disney era. Even though Disney owns the Marvel at this point, they're still working with Paramount. So they kind of have to go through what Paramount wanted.
I gotta say something, and I'm worried that some people might disagree with me, but, I love Natalie Portman, but I'm worried about the next Thor film.
You're not the only one. I've heard a lot of people have worries that Natalie Portman doesn't have the kind of chops to do the female version of Thor justice, the Jane Foster Thor.
Well, I don't think it's Natalie Portman that doesn't have the chops. I don't think that they've known how to write Jane Foster. I think that the way that the MCU has written her, because let's just face it, Thor Ragnarok, best Thor film ever. Mm-hmm. Which is the one without Jane Foster?
And we've seen that Jane Foster, when we get to Thor: The Dark World, Natalie Portman left Marvel on not so good terms. Basically,
also, which is the worst Thor movie so far?
Mm-hmm.
Which is the movie with the most Jane Foster?
Also, the most rewrites and the director changes. And
the only thing that makes me hopeful is that Taika Waititi is supposed to be doing Love and Thunder.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe he will know what to do with Jane Foster.
We'll find out next year, I believe. Is it next year?
It's still supposed to be released in May next year. I'm still hoping. We may get delays.
We got a year. We'll figure that out. By the end of the year, we'll find out more about this movie. Maybe a trailer. We don't know.
Yeah, I'm hopeful because she's a great actress just on her own. Mm-hmm. He's a great director and writer. I'm really hoping that combination is going to be good.
Mm-hmm.
But that character, Jane Foster, was the weak link in this film.
You're not wrong.
And so handing the mantle off to her as it stands is the unknown factor. I want it to work, but it's the unknown factor right now. So here's hoping.
Cautiously optimistic?
Cautiously optimistic. As far as this film, it's worth a rewatch. It's fun, but it's definitely more mind-numbing popcorn film than some of the others have been.
Mm-hmm.
This is definitely more sit back and let it wash over you rather than a really engaging film.
I think that's all we can say about this first Thor movie. So we'll move on to next week. We're taking a trip back in time to the 1940s because we're talking about Captain America, the First Avenger. The final piece of the puzzle to form the Avengers. Yeah, let's see. Going back to Marvel's first attempt at a period piece.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yep. Let's see if the Star-Spangled Man still has the plan. And we'll talk to you all next time. Bye.
Bye. Don't let the magic stop here.
Join our conversation online on Facebook at Rewatching the Magic.
Twitter at Rewatch the Magic.
And of course, new episodes every week at rewatchingthemagic.podbean.com.
Remember, the magic is for everyone.
It only stops if you let it.